At Thanksgiving dinner, my daughter-in-law left a card on the table. Family trip, it read. Clean the house before we're back. Even the nanny went along. I simply smiled. When they returned, their keys didn't work in the door, and my daughter-in-law fainted. You won't believe how this story unfolds. Like, share, and tell me where you're listening from. Let's get into it. The morning sun, usually a comforting friend, streamed through the stained glass window at the top of the grand staircase, casting rainbow patterns across the worn Persian rug. For 70 years, this house had been Alara's sanctuary, a place where every creak and groan was a familiar melody. But today, something was off. A strange, sharp burst of laughter, unfamiliar and unsettling, drifted up from the living room, slicing through the usual quiet hum of her morning routine. Alara paused, one hand resting on the polished banister, a frown deepening between her brows. Who could be here so early? As she descended the final steps, the voices grew clearer, punctuated by Serafina's distinctive tinkling laugh. Alara's daughter-in-law, Serafina, was a force of nature, often overwhelming, but usually predictable. Today, however, Serafina's tone held a proprietary confidence that prickled Alara's skin. Approaching the archway to the living room, Alara's heart gave a sudden, painful lurch. There, in her living room, stood Serafina, animated and gesturing broadly. Beside her were two strangers, a couple Alara had never seen before. They looked uncomfortable, their eyes darting around the room, taking in the antique furniture, the faded but cherished photographs on the mantelpiece, the very essence of Alara's life. Serafina was talking about the house, her voice bright and professional, as if she were a real estate agent. And of course, we'd gut the kitchen, open up that wall completely for a more modern flow, Serafina chirped, waving a hand vaguely towards Alara's beloved, perfectly functional kitchen. The garden, though requiring some landscaping, is perfect for a pool installation. The Millers, as Serafina introduced them with a dismissive flick of her wrist, nodded politely, their gazes avoiding Alara's. They were potential buyers. Buyers for her house. A cold dread seeped into Alara's bones, chilling her from the inside out. Serafina spoke of her home as if it were an empty vessel, a property already sold, its past and present owners utterly irrelevant. Every word was a fresh insult, a desecration of memories, of a lifetime lived within these walls. Alara's voice, when it finally emerged, was a trembling whisper, then strengthened by a sudden surge of indignation. What is going on here? This is my house. What are these people doing here? Her gaze fixed on Serafina, demanding answers, demanding an end to this surreal nightmare. Serafina turned slowly, a performative sigh escaping her lips. Her smile was saccharine sweet, dripping with fake concern. Oh, Alara, dear, you're up already. She turned to the Millers, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper, loud enough for Alara to hear. She gets confused sometimes. The doctor says it's natural at her age. Her eyes, however, held no confusion, only a chilling, calculated malice. Alara felt the blood drain from her face, then rush back in a fiery wave of pure rage. Confused? She was as sharp as ever, sharper than Serafina, who clearly believed her an easy mark. The Millers, already clearly embarrassed, began to back away towards the front door. Alara heard snippets of their hushed conversation as they made their hasty exit. Poor woman, losing her grip on reality. The words were like tiny poison darts, each one finding its mark. As the front door clicked shut, the false pleasantry vanished from Serafina's face, replaced by a cold, triumphant smirk. The mask was off. It's really for your own good, Alara, she said, her voice devoid of any warmth. You're already going to a nursing home. Sunset Manor, to be precise. The name hit Alara like a physical blow. Sunset Manor, the local euphemism for the town's cheapest, most dismal facility, known for its neglect and a pervasive smell of disinfectant and despair. It was where people were sent to fade away, forgotten. What are you talking about? Alara demanded, her voice barely a breath. A sudden crushing weight pressed down on her chest. Serafina's smile widened, revealing a startling cruelty. Oh, haven't you heard? Ethan signed the papers last week. Power of attorney. Declared you incompetent to manage your own affairs. The world tilted on its axis. Ethan, her son, her only child. He had done this? Without a word, without a warning? The betrayal was a physical ache, a gaping wound torn open in her heart. She remembered his last visit, his hurried goodbyes, the way he had avoided her eyes. It all made a terrible, sickening sense now. He hadn't just agreed to this, he had initiated it. Her own son, consigning her to a fate worse than death, simply to clear the way for Serafina to sell her home, their family home. Ilara felt utterly shattered, a fragile vessel crumbling into dust. The memories of Ethan as a boy, running through these very rooms, laughing, calling her name, twisted into a grotesque parody. A wave of nausea washed over her, but through the despair, a tiny spark ignited, a flicker of defiance, born from the deepest well of her being. She would not go down without a fight. She had built this life, raised her son in this house, weathered storms and celebrated triumphs within these walls. She was not some incompetent old woman to be shuffled off to a dark corner and forgotten. Ilara straightened her shoulders, a newfound strength coursing through her veins. Her voice, though still raw with emotion, resonated with an unwavering resolve. "I'm not going anywhere, Serafina." Serafina's smirk faltered for a fraction of a second, but then her eyes narrowed, gleaming with a dark, cruel enjoyment. "Oh, but you are. The movers come tomorrow. Everything's arranged." The casual dismissiveness, the outright glee in Serafina's eyes, fueled Ilara's rage. It simmered, hot and potent, beneath her carefully composed exterior. But she wouldn't give Serafina the satisfaction of seeing her break down. No, this wasn't a battle of tears, it was a war. And Ilara, for all her age, was a formidable adversary. A chilling calm settled over Ilara. Her voice, low and steady, was filled with a promise that made Serafina's triumphant expression freeze. "You're going to rot in jail, Serafina." The words hung in the air, cold and definitive. Serafina's jaw dropped, her carefully constructed composure shattering. She stared, stunned, a flicker of genuine fear replacing the cruel enjoyment in her eyes. She hadn't expected this. She had expected pleas, tears, perhaps even hysterics. She had gravely underestimated Ilara. Without another word, Ilara turned her back on her stunned daughter-in-law. She walked toward the study, her steps firm and deliberate, her mind racing. There were phone calls to make. Lawyers, banks, friends. Serafina had made a fatal error, and Ilara would make sure she paid dearly for it. The metallic tang of betrayal filled Ilara's mouth as she walked towards the kitchen, her mind a whirlwind of fragmented memories. The last 3 months had been punctuated by subtle shifts, small, unsettling occurrences she had dismissed as the normal ebb and flow of life with Serafina. Now they coalesced into a chilling pattern. The misplaced keys, the forgotten appointments Serafina would remind her of with exaggerated concern, the way important papers would occasionally vanish and reappear. Serafina had laid her insidious groundwork, meticulously fabricating evidence, sowing seeds of doubt about Ilara's mental acuity. Each incident, minor on its own, had been a careful stitch in a tightening web. Ilara had always prided herself on her sharp mind, but Serafina's relentless, quiet gaslighting had begun to wear her down, making her question herself just as intended. She was barely through the kitchen archway when Serafina's voice, now stripped of any pretense of sweetness, cut through the air. "Thinking of running away, Ilara? Or perhaps contemplating which cupboard you'll forget where the sugar is next?" Ilara turned, her eyes blazing. The casual cruelty in Serafina's tone was a stark contrast to the saccharine facade she presented to the world. And to Ethan. "You truly are despicable," Ilara retorted, her voice low and steady despite the tremor in her hands. Serafina merely shrugged, leaning against the polished granite countertop Ilara had installed after years of saving. "Just being realistic, Ilara. We've all been so worried about your little episodes, the forgetfulness. It's getting worse, you know." Her voice, though feigning concern, held a venomous edge. She toyed with a ceramic sugar bowl, her fingernail tracing its rim. "Remember just last week? Leaving the stove on after making your tea? It could have burned the whole house down." A cold, hard knot formed in Ilara's stomach. The stove incident. Serafina had brought it up to Ethan, full of exaggerated panic, claiming she'd barely caught it in time. Ethan, ever the dutiful son, had called Ilara. his voice thick with worry. At the time, Alara had felt a pang of guilt, wondering if she truly had been so careless. But now, clarity, sharp and unforgiving, pierced through the fog. "That's a lie," Alara said, her voice cutting through the kitchen's sterile silence. "Last Tuesday, the day you claim I left the stove on, I was at Dr. Evans's office for my quarterly checkup, from 9 until 10:30. Ethan himself drove me." She watched Serafina's carefully composed face. A flicker, barely perceptible, crossed Serafina's eyes. A flash of surprise, then something akin to irritation. Alara remembered now. Ethan had dropped her off and left, saying he had an urgent call. Serafina had been home, alone to stage the incident. Serafina's smile tightened. "Well, perhaps it was another hay. Or perhaps you're forgetting that appointment too, dear. It's all part of the pattern, isn't it?" She waved her hand dismissively, trying to regain control. "And the unpaid bills, the overflowing mailbox, the final notices?" "Unpaid bills?" Alara scoffed, a bitter laugh escaping her lips. "My accounts are meticulously managed, Serafina. Every bill paid, every statement filed. You'll find them all in the study, just as I left them. Unless, of course, you've removed them to create more of your evidence." Alara knew this was another fabrication. She had handled her finances independently for decades, perfectly capable and organized. Serafina was grasping at straws, trying to shore up her flimsy narrative. "I want to see the power of attorney documents," Alara demanded, her voice firm. "And I want to see a full accounting of my assets. Everything, now." Serafina arched a perfectly sculpted eyebrow. "Oh, those? Ethan has them. He's a busy man, Alara. He can't be bothered with every little detail. He's at work, making an honest living, unlike some people who simply exist off the generosity of others." "This has been your plan all along, hasn't it?" Alara pressed, ignoring the sting of Serafina's insults. "How long, Serafina? How long have you been plotting this? For months? Years?" Serafina's lips thinned. "Ethan is busy. He feels terrible about this, truly. But he knows it's for the best, for your safety." The words were hollow, ringing with manipulation. "He feels terrible, does he?" Alara echoed, her voice laced with scorn. "Or is he simply feeling the weight of your constant whispers, your guilt trips, your clever way of making him feel responsible for a problem that only exists in your twisted mind? Where is he now, Serafina? Hiding behind his work, letting you do his dirty work because he's too much of a coward to face his own mother?" Serafina flinched, her composure cracking. The caught lie about the stove, the pointed questions about Ethan's complicity, it was all getting to her. Her eyes flickered with a dangerous calculation, the facade of concern completely gone, replaced by raw anger. "Watch your tone, Alara. You think you're so clever, don't you? Well, let me tell you, if you make this difficult, I'll just move you to Sunset Manor sooner. Tomorrow even. I have the authority now. You have no say." "You can't do this," Alara whispered, the words catching in her throat, a desperate plea mixed with a simmering threat. Serafina leaned in close, her voice a low, chilling hiss. "Oh, but I can and I will. You think I've put up with this for nothing? This house, Alara, it's worth at least $400,000. $400,000. That's our real life together, Ethan's and mine. No more struggling, no more pretending to be interested in your boring stories, your ancient furniture, your endless needs." Her voice rose, betraying a deep-seated resentment that Alara had never fully grasped. "Do you know how much I resented you? How much I hated watching him dote on you, even after he married me? He felt obligated, Alara. That's what he told me. Obligated, not true love. He loves me. He cares about you because you're his mother, but he loves me." The words were venom, spat with a raw intensity that shocked Alara. Serafina truly hated her. "He won't visit you there, Serafina continued, a cruel smile returning. "Sunset Manor is too far out of the way, too depressing. He'll send flowers at Christmas maybe, a card for your birthday, and then he'll forget all about you just like everyone else." She stepped back, her chest puffing out, believing herself victorious. "You have no money. You have no legal standing. You have no allies. Face facts, Alara. You've already lost." With a final triumphant smirk, Serafina turned and strode out of the kitchen, leaving Alara alone amidst the ghosts of her shattered life. But as the echo of Serafina's departing footsteps faded, Alara didn't collapse. She didn't cry. A singular burning resolve hardened her gaze. Serafina had made a terrible miscalculation. Alara reached for the antique rotary phone on the small wall desk, her fingers trembling slightly as she began to dial a number she knew by heart. Detective Rick Reed. True to his word, Detective Rick Reed arrived at Alara's home within the hour. A man of quiet competence, Rick had been a family friend for years, a former colleague of her late husband. He moved with a practiced ease, his keen eyes missing nothing as he took in the slight disarray of the living room, a subtle tension still lingering in the air. He settled into the armchair opposite Alara, its floral patterns softened by decades of use, and placed his worn leather briefcase on the antique coffee table. "All right, Alara," Rick began, his voice a low, calming rumble. "Let's hear it. You sounded distressed." He always listened more than he spoke, a trait Alara deeply valued. Alara recounted the morning's events, the casual cruelty of Serafina's words, the shock of the Millers, the sickening revelation of the power of attorney. Rick listened intently, occasionally nodding, his expression grave. When she finished, a heavy silence settled between them. Finally, Rick exhaled slowly. "Your instincts were right, Alara. Serafina Chen has a history." Lara felt a cold dread creep up her spine, confirming the sickening feeling she'd had from the moment she first met Serafina. She remembered her initial unease, the subtle inconsistencies in Serafina's stories, the way her eyes seemed to hold a calculating glint even as she smiled. 6 months ago, driven by a nagging suspicion she couldn't quite articulate, Alara had quietly asked Rick to run some informal background checks. He had been hesitant, assuring her that people deserve privacy, but Alara had insisted, pleading a mother's intuition. He hadn't found anything concrete then, Serafina's past seemingly pristine. But Rick had promised to keep an eye out, to delve deeper if anything suspicious arose. Now, it seemed, something had definitely arisen. Rick unzipped his briefcase and pulled out a manila folder, surprisingly thick. He opened it, revealing a series of documents, photographs, and printouts. "It took some digging," he explained, "and a few calls to some old contacts. But we found her, or rather, her true identity, and her pattern." He slid a document across the table. "Case number 1, Phoenix." Her name then was Serafina Chen, just like now. Married to Walter Reed, really Robert Chen, a 74-year-old widower, diagnosed with early-stage dementia. Within weeks of their marriage, she moved him into a memory care facility, despite his family's objections. Said he needed professional care. Then she systematically sold his house, liquidated all his assets. 18 months later, Walter passed away. She walked away with close to $300,000, claiming it was her rightful inheritance as his wife. Alara felt a wave of nausea, the calculated precision, the ruthless efficiency. It was sickening. She remembered how Serafina had praised Ethan for being so attentive to her, for helping her with her finances. Now, the words tasted like ash. Rick turned to the next page. Case number 2, Denver. Same woman, different name this time. Serafina Chen again. But her husband was Arthur Stone, real name James Wright, a 58-year-old, seemingly healthy man. Arthur lived with his elderly mother, Eleanor Stone, actual name Eleanor Wright. Serafina convinced Arthur that Eleanor was becoming a burden, that she needed more specialized care. Against Eleanor's fervent wishes, she was moved into a nursing home. 6 months later, Eleanor died. The official cause was stress-related complications, but the family suspected foul play. No charges were ever filed, but a pattern was emerging. Alara's breath hitched. The parallels to her own situation were chilling, terrifying. Serafina's words from earlier echoed in her mind. "You're already going to a nursing home." This wasn't just a threat, it was a blueprint. Rick continued, his voice grim. "And then case number 3, Portland. This is where it really comes together. Married to Leo Park, his real name, David Kim, a 43-year-old software engineer. He was perfectly healthy, but his 91-year-old grandmother lived with them. This time, Leo's sister grew suspicious. She had heard whispers from the previous incidents. Rumors that Serafina had a way of dealing with elderly relatives. The sister hired a private investigator. Rick paused, allowing the gravity of his words to sink in. The investigator dug deep, uncovered Serafina's true history, her aliases, her methods. Before the sister could gather enough evidence to press charges or warn Leo, Serafina disappeared overnight. She cleaned out their joint accounts, took all the valuables she could carry, and vanished. No trace for months, until she reappeared here, marrying Ethan. Alara's blood ran cold. Ethan, her son, caught in this spider's web. Her real name, Alara, Rick stated, his eyes meeting hers, is Helena Crosby. She's 34 years old, not the 29 she told everyone. And she has a sealed juvenile record for elder abuse. At 17, she was caught stealing from the residents of a nursing home where she worked as a junior aide. It was expunged, but the pattern, it's always been there. A new realization dawned on Alara, a sickening clarity. Serafina's relentless visits over the past 2 years, the seemingly innocent questions about the house, the family heirlooms, her finances. She wasn't just visiting, Alara whispered, the pieces clicking into place with a horrifying precision. She was cataloging assets, assessing value, planning her next move. Exactly, Rick confirmed, his face grim. She's thorough, and she's patient. She's learned from each attempt. Alara's thoughts raced back to the morning. Rick, she brought potential buyers to the house this morning. She's moving fast. She said she plans to move me to Sunset Manor, probably next week, maybe even tomorrow. Rick's expression hardened. That's the critical part, Alara. Once she gets you into a care facility, especially under a fraudulent power of attorney, fighting for guardianship becomes exponentially harder. It creates the illusion that you are incompetent, that you do need care. The courts tend to side with the family member who appears to be acting in the elderly person's best interest. We need to act quickly before she completes her plan. He leaned forward, his voice low and urgent. Do you have any idea where Ethan might have signed these documents, or who the lawyer was? Alara shook her head, her mind reeling from the avalanche of information. No, he never mentioned anything. I thought he was just busy with work. The pain of her son's betrayal, even if he was manipulated, was a fresh wound. All right, Rick said, snapping the folder shut. Here's what we do. We need to freeze your assets immediately, and we need to get a temporary restraining order against Serafina, Helena, to prevent her from moving you or selling the house. Alara's gaze met his, steely with newfound resolve. What about Ethan? Will he be in trouble? Rick sighed. That depends on how much he knew and how much he was truly manipulated. But right now, our priority is your safety and protecting your assets. We'll deal with Ethan later. This woman is dangerous, Alara. We can't let her get away with this again. Rick leaned back in the armchair, his brow furrowed in thought. The afternoon light filtering through the window seemed to dim, casting long shadows across the room, mirroring the gravity of their conversation. The system is designed to protect vulnerable seniors, Alara, he began, his voice laced with a weary cynicism. But it can be easily manipulated. Once someone is deemed incompetent, any objections they raise, any resistance to being moved or having their assets managed can be twisted by a manipulator into further evidence of their declining mental state. It's a vicious cycle that's incredibly hard to break once it starts, especially from inside a care facility. Alara listened, a cold knot tightening in her stomach. She understood the insidious logic. Every protest, every plea for sanity would only be used against her, cementing her fate in the eyes of a detached legal system. But Serafina had underestimated her. Just as she thought she was clever, Alara had her own ace in the hole, a quiet act of self-preservation born from that initial, nagging suspicion. What if I told you, Alara began, her voice steady, that I've been recording every conversation Serafina and I have had for the past 3 months? Rick's head snapped up, his eyes widening in astonishment. He stared at Alara for a long moment, processing her words. You have? His voice was a mixture of disbelief and growing excitement. Every conversation? Almost every one, Alara confirmed, a ghost of a defiant smile touching her lips. From the moment she started getting unusually concerned about my memory, about my forgetfulness, I bought a small digital recorder, kept it in my pocket, in my purse, even under a teacup. It's a habit I picked up from my husband, you know. He always said, documentation is your best friend, Alara, even when you think you don't need it. Rick's professional demeanor momentarily cracked, a genuine smile spreading across his face. Alara, that's incredible. That's exactly what we need. It's direct evidence in her own voice of her manipulations, her threats, her lies. This changes everything. He leaned forward, his eyes gleaming with renewed purpose. This is going to be crucial in freezing your assets and getting that temporary restraining order. But then his expression sobered again. There's something else, Alara, something that's been bothering me about Sunset Manor. My contacts in elder care have mentioned an unusually high number of deaths there over the past 2 years. Many of those residents, particularly those without close, attentive family, had their assets transferred or managed by their assigned guardians shortly before their passing. It's usually brushed off as natural causes for the elderly, but the frequency is suspicious. Alara felt another chill. Are you saying Serafina might have connections there? Inside the facility? It wouldn't surprise me, Rick replied, his voice low. She's a master manipulator, and she knows how the system works. Having someone on the inside could streamline her entire operation. This isn't just about selling your house and stealing your money, Alara. Given her history and the pattern at Sunset Manor, your discovery this morning might have prevented something much, much worse, Rick. Alara swallowed hard, the full implication of his words sinking in. Not just financial ruin, but a sinister end. Serafina had planned for her to disappear, to fade away, just like the others. We need to set a trap, Alara declared, her voice firm, unwavering. We can't let her get away this time, Rick. Not after all the lives she's ruined. Her resolve was no longer just about saving herself. It was about justice for Walter Reed, for Eleanor Stone, and for any other Serafina or Helena Crosby had preyed upon. Rick nodded, a steely determination in his eyes. Agreed, but Dad. We use her arrogance against her. We let her think she's winning while we gather everything we need to bring her down for good. They spent the next few hours meticulously planning, Alara providing details of her routines, her financial accounts, her doctor's appointments. Rick outlined the legal steps, the need for discretion, and the importance of acting swiftly but carefully. As Rick left, the house felt charged with a new energy, no longer a place of quiet despair, but a battlefield where a decisive victory would be won. Alara barely slept that night, her mind buzzing with the details of their plan, replaying snippets of conversations, searching for any overlooked clues. The full weight of Serafina's depravity, her calculated evil, pressed down on her. Just as dawn was breaking, casting a pale light through her bedroom window, Alara sat bolt upright in bed, a sudden startling clarity piercing through her exhaustion. Something they had missed, a crucial detail about Serafina's identities, the way she cycled through them. She grabbed her phone, her fingers fumbling slightly in her haste. There was only one person who could help her with this, someone she trusted implicitly, someone with access to exactly the kind of records she needed. She dialed a number she knew by heart. It rang twice before a sleepy voice answered. Brenda, it's Alara. I'm so sorry to call you this early, but I need your help. It's urgent. Brenda Hayes, Alara's best friend since childhood, worked at the county clerk's office. She was a woman of quiet efficiency and unwavering loyalty. Brenda yawned, but the moment she heard the urgency in Alara's tone, her sleepiness vanished. Alara, what's wrong? You never call this early. It's about Serafina, Alara explained, her voice low and tense. I need you to dig into some old records for me. Something about marriage certificates, perhaps some death certificates, cross-referencing names. I think she's been using different names for different victims, but sometimes she reuses the Serafina Chen persona. And I need to know if she's ever used other names while married as Serafina Chen. Brenda was silent for a moment, absorbing the gravity of Alara's request. Alara, this sounds serious. Are you okay? I will be, Alara replied, a steely resolve in her voice. But I need this, Brenda. It could be the key to stopping her for good. Consider it done, Brenda said without hesitation, her voice now crisp and alert. Well, no. I'll be in the office in an hour. I'll call you the moment I find anything. Alara hung up, a flicker of hope igniting in her chest. She wasn't alone. She had Rick. She had Brenda. And she had a plan. If you're still with me, get ready, because this story is about to take an even wilder turn. You won't believe what we uncovered next. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so you don't miss a single part of this unfolding drama. Let's get back to it. The morning light, now fully present, did little to dispel the lingering shadows of doubt and fear that clung to Alara. After hanging up with Brenda, Alara immediately compiled a list of every name Rick had provided for Serafina. Helena Crosby, Serafina Chen, along with the approximate dates and locations of her previous marriages and the names of her alleged husbands. She relayed all the information to Brenda via text, knowing her friend would need every detail to navigate the labyrinthine county records. She paced the living room, replaying the conversations with Rick, the horrifying details of Serafina's past victims, and the chilling realization that her son was deeply entangled with this predator. 2 agonizing hours later, Alara's phone vibrated, startling her. It was Brenda. Alara answered instantly, her heart pounding a frantic rhythm against her ribs. Brenda's voice, usually calm and composed, was tight with barely suppressed shock and concern. Alara, you need to sit down for this. Really? Alara sank onto the nearest armchair, bracing herself. What is it, Brenda? What did you find? It's worse than we thought. Brenda breathed, her voice barely above a whisper. Helena Crosby, you're Serafina. She's still legally married. To multiple men. Alara felt a cold wave wash over her, a sickening sensation that churned her stomach. What are you saying? In Oregon, Brenda explained, her voice gaining a professional edge as she recited her findings. Helena Crosby, identifying herself as Serafina Chen, married a Leo Park, David Kim, in 2018. There's no record of a divorce. She's still legally married to him. Alara's mind reeled. This woman was brazen, audacious beyond belief. And it doesn't stop there, Brenda continued, her voice grim. In Colorado, Helena Crosby, again as Serafina Chen, married Arthur Stone, James Wright, in 2016. Again, no divorce record. He's still legally her husband. Alara gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. 2 men, 2 ongoing legal marriages. The sheer audacity of it left her speechless. This meant Ethan's marriage. So, Alara managed to choke out, her voice barely audible. This means Ethan, his marriage to her, it's not valid. No, Alara, Brenda confirmed, her voice filled with sympathy. It's absolutely not valid. Your son, Ethan, legally is not married to Helena Crosby. Not if she was already married to 2 other men when she married him. The revelation hit Alara like a physical blow. Her son, entangled in a bigamous marriage, a grand deception. The layers of Serafina's deceit were peeling back, each one more horrifying than the last. Helena Crosby was a serial fraudster, a predator of the worst kind. She wasn't just targeting the elderly, she was weaving a complex web of lies around everyone she touched, including Alara's own son. There's more, Alara, Brenda added, her voice heavy. I dug back further to the Phoenix case. Helena Crosby married Walter Reed, Robert Chen, in Arizona in 2014. And guess what? Walter died in 2016, but there's no record of Helena Crosby legally changing her name after his death. She just started using Chen as her surname, building on that initial legitimate marriage, even as she moved on to new husbands. It's how she maintains a thread of plausibility. Alara closed her eyes, a sharp pain piercing her temples. The full scope of Serafina's modus operandi crystallized in her mind. This wasn't just a series of isolated incidents. It was a systematic, calculated pattern of bigamy and fraud, stretching back years, perhaps even decades. She used the Chen surname as her default, a convenient anchor of identity, while she ensnared other unsuspecting men. Ethan had just been her latest victim, another mark in her long line of deceptions. Without a moment's hesitation, Alara ended the call with Brenda and immediately dialed Rick. Her fingers trembled as she waited for him to answer. Rick, you won't believe what Brenda just found. Alara blurted out, skipping any pleasantries. She quickly recounted Brenda's discoveries, the multiple ongoing marriages, the deliberate misuse of the Chen surname, the sprawling web of bigamy. There was a stunned silence on Rick's end, far longer than usual. Alara, he finally said, his voice low and laced with a profound astonishment. This changes everything. Everything. What does this mean? Alara asked, her voice tight with a mixture of dread and a grim satisfaction. It means, Rick replied, that Helena Crosby isn't just committing elder abuse and fraud. Multi-state bigamy is a federal crime, Alara. We're talking about wire fraud, mail fraud, possibly even tax evasion with her shifting identities and undeclared marital statuses. This is far beyond the scope of local police now. Alara held her breath, trying to grasp the implications. The FBI, Rick continued, his voice gaining a new edge of grim enthusiasm, is going to be very, very interested in Helena Crosby. This isn't just a local case anymore. She's operating on a national scale, and she's been doing it for years. A powerful surge of vindication, cold and potent, coursed through Alara. Serafina, who had prided herself on her cleverness, her ability to vanish and reappear, had made a fatal error. She had tangled with the wrong woman, underestimated her victim, and now her entire house of cards was about to come crashing down, with the full force of federal law enforcement behind it. The game had just changed. The enormity of Serafina's crimes, her long history of deceit and bigamy, left Alara momentarily stunned. But a different kind of strength began to solidify within her. Not just survival, but a fierce desire for justice. She gripped the phone tighter. What about Sunset Manor, Rick? She said she could move me as early as tomorrow. Does this change anything about the immediate threat? Rick's voice was calm, reassuring. It does, Alara, but not in the way you might think. For now, I need you to play along. Act defeated, resigned. Don't fight her. Let her think she's won. Alara's brow furrowed. But why? If we have all this? Because, Alara, Rick interrupted gently, multi-state bigamy, wire fraud, all of it, it's a big case. It needs federal involvement. That means coordinating with the FBI, the district attorney's office, building a rock-solid case that she can't wriggle out of. That takes time. If you resist now, if you alert her that you know, she might panic and bolt, just like she did in Portland. He continued, his voice firm. Helena Crosby is cunning. She'll want to finalize the sale of your house, extract every last dollar, and make sure her tracks are covered before she leaves. She won't rush the move to Sunset Manor if she thinks you're compliant. She needs you out, but not so fast that it raises immediate red flags, and she certainly doesn't want you to cause a scene that might jeopardize her precious sale. Your feigned defeat will buy us time, Alara. It will give us the window we need to build an unassailable case and make sure she cannot escape this time. Alara thought about his words, about the cold satisfaction she had seen in Serafina's eyes, her belief that she had conquered her. It would be difficult to put on such an act, to feign surrender when her heart was roaring for a fight. But Rick was right. This wasn't just about her anymore. This was about stopping a serial predator. All right, Alara finally said, her voice laced with a resolve that transcended her temporary concession. I'll do it. I'll play the part. After she hung up with Rick, a fresh wave of strategic thinking washed over Alara. If something did happen, if Serafina somehow managed to bypass their plan, she needed a failsafe. A place where the truth would be undeniable, even if Alara herself was silenced. Her mind immediately went to her safety deposit box at First National Bank, a place of silent, secure trust. She gathered her digital recorder, now filled with Serafina's incriminating words. She printed copies of Rick's findings, the aliases, the patterns, the tragic fates of Walter Reed and Eleanor Stone. She carefully transcribed Brenda's shocking discoveries about Serafina's multiple marriages, highlighting the glaring inconsistencies and the sheer illegality of her actions. To this growing dossier, she added a handwritten letter, addressed to her attorney, outlining everything, stating unequivocally her sound mind and the calculated nature of Serafina's plot. This was her final insurance policy, a message in a bottle for the future. Driving to the bank, her hands gripped the steering wheel, her resolve hardening with every mile. The act of physically placing the evidence into the steel box, the heavy click of the lock, felt like a tangible act of defiance, a silent promise to herself that Serafina would not win. She then called Rick, informing him of the safety deposit box and its contents, ensuring that even if she became incapacitated, the truth would ultimately emerge. He approved of her foresight, his admiration for her growing with each revelation. Her next move was the most difficult. She had to reach out to Ethan, to draw him back into her orbit, to subtly plant the seeds of doubt without alerting Serafina. She called his office. His secretary, a kind woman named Martha who had known Alara for years, put her through immediately, her voice hushed with implied sympathy. "Mother, are you all right? Serafina told me you've been having some difficulties." Ethan's voice was cautious, tinged with a concern that, in this new light, sounded tinged with guilt. Alara forced a soft, slightly shaky tone into her voice, embodying the part Rick had outlined. "Oh, Ethan, dear, I'm trying to be. This is all so much, so sudden." She paused, letting the silence stretch, letting him absorb the vulnerability she was projecting. "I was wondering, darling, if you might come for dinner this Sunday. Just the two of us. It feels like so long since we've truly talked. Really talked." There was a moment of hesitation on Ethan's end, a telltale pause. "Sunday? I'd have to check with Serafina, Mother. You know how busy her schedule is. And mine." Alara smiled, a knowing, bitter curve of her lips that Ethan couldn't see. "Of course, dear. Give my love to Serafina, and tell her she's more than welcome to join us, of course. The more the merrier, after all." She knew with absolute certainty that Serafina would insist on attending. The predator would want to keep a close eye on her prey to ensure Alara didn't deviate from her resigned performance, to monitor every word that passed between mother and son. Serafina would want to control the narrative, to reinforce her dominance. She would believe she was coming to watch Alara's final defeat, but Alara knew better. She was setting the stage for Serafina's downfall. Sunday arrived, cloaked in a deceptive sense of normalcy. The scent of roasted chicken and fresh herbs filled Alara's home, a familiar comfort meant to evoke cherished memories. Yet for Alara, it was anything but normal. Every dish was prepared with meticulous care, every setting on the antique dining table arranged with a purpose. This wasn't just dinner, it was the final act in Serafina's carefully constructed charade, and Alara was ready to play her part. She had spent the intervening days cultivating an air of weary resignation, allowing her shoulders to slump a little, her movements to become a touch slower. It was a performance, but one that felt painfully close to the truth of her shattered heart. Precisely at 6 o'clock, the doorbell chimed. Alara took a deep breath, straightened her dress, and smoothed her silver hair. When she opened the door, Ethan stood there, Serafina's hand possessively resting on his arm, a silent declaration of ownership. Serafina offered a saccharine smile, her eyes, however, betraying a keen predatory watchfulness. Ethan leaned in for a hug, but it felt distant, perfunctory. His lips brushed her cheek, and Alara felt the invisible barrier Serafina had erected between them. The full extent of her daughter-in-law's influence, her cunning manipulation of her son, was laid bare in that simple gesture. "Mother, you look lovely," Ethan offered, his voice a little strained. "Darling," Alara replied, her voice soft, imbued with a hint of fragile sweetness. "And Serafina, how wonderful of you to join us." She managed a weak smile, then bustled into the kitchen, the clatter of pots and pans providing a welcome distraction. She knew Serafina was watching her, scrutinizing her every move for any sign of confusion or decline. During dinner, Alara maintained a facade of polite, if slightly weary, lucidity. She steered the conversation towards a pleasant, innocuous topics, recounting old anecdotes about Ethan's childhood, asking about Serafina's latest shopping finds. Her memory was sharp, her responses articulate, visibly unsettling Serafina, whose smiles became progressively tighter. Ethan, however, seemed to relax slightly, perhaps genuinely enjoying the reprieve from Serafina's constant vigilance. As the plates were cleared, a tension began to prickle the air. Serafina cleared her throat, catching Ethan's eye. He fidgeted slightly, then addressed Alara. "Mother, Serafina and we've been talking about some changes. We think they'd be good for you." Alara lowered her gaze, feigning a touch of vulnerability. "Changes? Oh dear. What kind of changes, darling? Serafina seized the opportunity. It's just Alara. We're so concerned about you living alone. Ethan worries constantly with your incidents. It's just not safe. She spoke with exaggerated sympathy, her hand resting on Ethan's arm, as if for emotional support. Incidents? Alara feigned a slight furrow of her brow as if struggling to recall. Oh, my memory isn't what it used to be. Which incidents are you referring to, dear? It was a subtle prod, an invitation for Serafina to trot out her fabricated evidence. Serafina pulled out her phone as if on cue, scrolling through a meticulously prepared list. Well, darling, there was the stove incident, of course. Ethan found it left on, barely avoided a fire. And then the unpaid bills, the final notices that piled up. It's just too much for you to manage alone. Her voice was a purring stream of false concern, each word a calculated lie designed to paint Alara as incompetent. Alara listened, a silent acknowledgement of Serafina's success in manipulating Ethan. Her son's face was etched with genuine worry, a testament to how effectively Serafina had fed him a false narrative, preying on his love and filial duty. He believed he was acting in her best interest. Ethan cleared his throat, picking up Serafina's cue. Mother, we've been looking into assisted living options. There's a wonderful place, Sunset Manor. It's quite lovely, really. Lots of activities, professional care. He trailed off, avoiding her gaze. Alara's eyes welled with carefully simulated tears. Sunset Manor? Oh, Ethan, this house. It's been my home for 70 years. Your father and I built our life here. Every room holds a memory. I don't want to leave. It feels like you're trying to erase me. Serafina moved in for the kill. Oh, Alara, don't be so dramatic. It's for your own good. And besides, with the sale of the house, you'll have more than enough for your care. We had it appraised, you know, $400,000, all for your comfort and security. Her eyes glittered, a barely concealed avarice shining through. 400,000, Alara murmured, as if slightly overwhelmed. My goodness, are there buyers already? She played the part of the naive, trusting mother perfectly. Oh yes, Serafina chirped, her confidence soaring. The Millers, a lovely couple. They're very eager to bob in. Ethan, wanting to smooth things over, added, and we were very lucky to secure a room at Sunset Manor, Mother. They had a long waiting list, but Serafina worked her magic. Alara nodded slowly, as if accepting her fate. Then a new question, delivered with perfect innocence. And the papers, darling? The ones Ethan signed, the power of attorney. I'd like to understand them, just so I know everything is in order, that I'm properly protected. Serafina waved a dismissive hand. Oh, don't worry your pretty head about boring legal details, Alara. Ethan's handled everything. You're completely protected. It's all just standard procedure. She offered a patronizing pat to Alara's hand. Alara slowly stood, feigning a sudden need for air, a slight tremor in her hands. I just need a moment, dear. A little overwhelmed. She walked towards the kitchen window, gazing out into the rapidly darkening backyard, listening intently. From the dining room, she heard Serafina's voice, low and conspiratorial. She seems more confused than usual tonight, Ethan. Did you notice? Maybe you're right about the timeline. We should push for the move earlier. A triumphant purr was evident in Serafina's tone. Alara's lips thinned into a grim line. Confused am I, she thought. You have no idea, Serafina. You have no idea what's coming. The trap was set. Alara stood by the kitchen window, her back to Ethan and Serafina, listening to their conspiratorial whispers. The feigned confusion, the fragile vulnerability she had painstakingly portrayed, began to melt away, replaced by a steely resolve. Her heart hammered against her ribs, but it was not with fear. It was with righteous anger and a grim determination. The stage was set. She turned slowly, her hand conspicuously holding her phone. Her gaze met Ethan's, then slid to Serafina, whose smug expression instantly faltered. There's something I need to tell you both, Alara announced, her voice clear and strong, devoid of any feigned weakness. Before either of them could respond, Alara pressed play on her phone. The small device connected to a hidden miniature recorder filled the dining room with a voice that was unmistakably Serafina's, sharp and cruel. Because I can. The house will sell for at least $400,000. Our real life without his mother hovering over everything. The words, spoken just days ago, echoed in the quiet room, chilling and undeniable. Serafina's face, usually so composed, went instantly white, draining of all color. Her eyes, wide with disbelief and dawning horror, darted from Alara to Ethan. Ethan, initially confused, stared at his wife, then back at his mother, his brow furrowed in a growing sense of shock. "What is this?" Serafina demanded, her voice a strangled whisper, her composure crumbling. Alara met her gaze, unflinching. "This is you, Serafina. 3 days ago, explaining to me exactly why you're destroying my life, plotting to throw me out of my home and steal my assets." She pressed play again, and another snippet of Serafina's chilling monologue filled the room. "Face facts, Alara. You've already lost. You have no money of your own anymore. No legal standing, no allies." The silence that followed was thick with tension, heavy with the weight of exposure. Ethan's face was a mask of utter horror. He looked from the phone in Alara's hand to Serafina, his voice trembling as he spoke. "Serafina? What is this? What is she talking about?" Serafina, momentarily stunned, quickly recovered, her features twisting into a caricature of indignation. It's taken out of context. She's confused, Ethan. She's paranoid. She's making things up. You know how she gets with her episodes." Her voice rose, shrill and desperate, trying to reassert her narrative, to gaslight them both. But Alara wouldn't let her. With a deliberate, unhurried motion, she walked over to her china cabinet, pulling open the bottom drawer. From it, she retrieved Rick's manila folder, now much thicker than when she first saw it. She opened it and placed it squarely on the dining table, its contents visible. "This," Alara stated, her voice resonating with an authority that left no room for doubt, "is the truth. Your real name isn't Serafina Chen. It's Helena Crosby." Serafina let out a small gasp, a raw sound of pure fear. Ethan looked from the documents to Serafina, his eyes wide, disbelieving. Alara continued, laying out the evidence with devastating calm. "Helena Crosby, who married Leo Park in Oregon, Helena Crosby, who married Arthur Stone in Colorado, and Helena Crosby, who married Walter Reed in Arizona." She paused, letting each name sink in, letting the full horror of Serafina's past crimes unfold before Ethan. Then Alara dropped the final, most devastating bombshell. "But the most important thing, Ethan, is this. Helena Crosby is still legally married to at least 2 of those men, which means your marriage, darling, to this woman is absolutely and completely invalid." The words hung in the air, shattering the last vestiges of normalcy. Ethan staggered back, clutching the back of a dining chair for support, his face pale, his eyes fixed on Serafina in utter disbelief. The woman he loved, the woman he had trusted, was a serial bigamist, a con artist. "This woman," Alara declared, her voice rising with a controlled fury, "is a predator, Ethan. She preys on the vulnerable, on elderly family members, systematically defrauding them, often leading to their untimely deaths." Serafina, her carefully constructed world crumbling around her, reacted with a panicked, animalistic desperation. "She's insane. She's absolutely insane. Ethan, don't listen to her. She's trying to poison you against me." She made a sudden lunge for the door, her only thought escape. "Sit down, Serafina," Alara commanded, her voice cutting through the panic, holding up her phone. Serafina froze, caught between flight and disbelief. Then Alara dialed a number, her thumb steady. "Detective Morrison," she said into the phone, her eyes never leaving Serafina. "It's Alara. It's time." Within 10 minutes, the quiet, elegant dining room was filled with uniformed officers and plainclothes agents. Rick Reed, 2 FBI agents, and a representative from the district attorney's office filled the space, their expressions grim and determined. "Helena Crosby," one of the FBI agents stated, her voice crisp and authoritative, "you are under arrest for multi-state bigamy, wire fraud, mail fraud, and conspiracy to commit elder abuse." Serafina screamed, a high-pitched, desperate sound. "No, you can't do this. This is a setup. She's crazy." She struggled as the agents moved to cuff her, her eyes wild with terror and rage. As they led her away, her hands secured behind her back, Serafina twisted her head, her gaze locking onto Alara. Her face contorted into a mask of pure hatred. You think you've won, Alara. You've destroyed your relationship with your son forever, she hissed, her voice raw. Alara met her gaze, a cold, hard truth in her eyes. Maybe, she replied, her voice low and steady, but at least he'll be alive to hate me. The unspoken names of Walter Reed and Eleanor Stone hung heavy in the air, a testament to the lives Serafina had extinguished. Serafina continued to scream protests, her voice echoing through the grand hallway as she was escorted out, her reign of terror finally over. The silence that descended upon Alara's dining room after Serafina's dramatic exit was deafening. Ethan, his face ashen, remained slumped in his chair, shell-shocked. The world he had known, the woman he had loved, had disintegrated before his eyes, replaced by a monstrous truth. The plates of untouched dinner, once a symbol of family, now sat like silent witnesses to a devastating betrayal. Alara sat opposite him, allowing him time to process, her own heart aching for her son. Finally, Ethan spoke, his voice hoarse, barely a whisper. The power of attorney. I never signed any papers, Mother. Not for that. She kept saying they were coming through or there was a delay with the lawyer. She just needed my verbal consent for a few things, she said, to help you with minor affairs. A fresh wave of sickening clarity washed over Ethan. The stove incident, the unpaid bills, all of it. She invented it, didn't she? All of it was just her trying to make me believe you were losing your mind. He looked at Alara, his eyes full of pain and self-reproach. Yes, darling, Alara confirmed gently. Every fabricated crisis, every concern she voiced was a calculated manipulation. To isolate us, to make you doubt me. How long, Ethan asked, his voice raw. How long did you know? Alara sighed, her gaze softening. My suspicions started about 6 months ago. Small things, inconsistencies, a gut feeling. She was too perfect, too attentive in a way that felt insincere. That's when I quietly started gathering evidence. Why didn't you tell me? He pleaded, a hint of accusation in his tone. Because you wouldn't have believed me, Ethan, Alara said, her voice heavy with the truth. You were so in love. You would have seen it as a jealous mother trying to undermine your marriage. You would have defended her, just as she intended. Ethan lowered his head, his shoulders shaking slightly. You're right, he admitted, his voice barely audible. I would have. I would have thought you were jealous. The confession was a painful acknowledgement of his own blindness, his own complicity in Serafina's scheme. So I did it my way, Alara continued, quietly, carefully, to protect you, darling, to protect us both. Ethan looked up, his eyes meeting hers, a new understanding dawning in their depths. Mother, you could have been killed, couldn't you? Like the others. Sunset Manor. That wasn't just a nursing home. The realization hit him with full force, his mother's bravery and sacrifice suddenly terrifyingly clear. Over the next few weeks, the full scope of Helena Crosby's crimes was meticulously uncovered by federal investigators. More victims emerged, their stories echoing the pattern Rick had described. The web of fraud stretched across multiple states, implicating others, leading to the shutdown of Sunset Manor, which was found to be involved in a systematic pattern of elder abuse and financial exploitation. The facility's dark secrets were dragged into the light, its management found complicit in facilitating Helena's schemes and others like them. Ethan, devastated but determined to make amends, cooperated fully with the investigation. He provided financial records, recounted conversations, and painstakingly pieced together the timeline of Serafina's manipulations. He processed his guilt and betrayal, each revelation a fresh stab of pain, but also a step towards healing. He even confessed to Alara how he had transferred $15,000 to Serafina for a down payment on a non-existent vacation home in Aruba, a dream she had spun so convincingly. Alara, despite the financial loss, simply held his hand, assuring him, "It's not your fault, darling. You were a victim too." 3 months later, Alara and Ethan sat in a federal courtroom facing Helena Crosby.